Okay, we are live now.
Okay. I want to welcome everybody to the SACOG Race, Equity, and Inclusion Workshop. This is a working group that gets together at different times. We have a meeting today, and our next meeting will be held on April the 21st from 1 to 3 p.m., followed by a meeting in June 29th from 2 to 4 p.m., and then another meeting in October 26th from 3 to 5 p.m. And you'll get more information about any of those things. And Lynette, do you have any announcements that you want to make at this time?
Yes, I'll announce just for our members who have not participated in one of our Zoom meetings, we ask that if you're not speaking or commenting that you mute your device so that we don't have carryover from your devices. And again, James went over our quorum requirements. So we are just waiting for our 11th member, which should be joining us shortly. And we're glad to see you all here this morning.
Great, great, great. Well, we've got a agenda in front of us, and I'm trying to figure out, Lynette, am I ready to move forward, or are we still waiting?
We are still waiting, Chair Jennings. And I did hear from one of our members just a few minutes ago who said that she is just having a few technical difficulties. So hopefully she'll be on with us any minute.
Great. I understand the technical difficulties. I got on my iPad and I was all ready to go. And as you've seen, I've moved from one space to another. That wasn't technical, that was lighting. The lighting was bad behind me, so I had to move from 3 different places in the room. You probably saw me moving and turning my camera off so that you wouldn't see everything that I was doing. And then when I finally got settled and was able to see each of you, I realized that my iPad had only 10% battery time left, which is not going to be enough time for this. So I had to move again into a different space all over again. So I understand the difficulties of these virtual meetings, and so needed to prepare myself a lot sooner. So I'm buying time, as you can tell.
I'm just conferring with our legal counsel who's online with us, Joanna. Would it be appropriate for us to do the Pledge of Allegiance and the roll call and then just wait to proceed until we have our 11th member here for our consent item? Would that be appropriate?
Yes, Lynette, that would be appropriate.
Chair Jennings, if you want to do the pledge and roll call and public communications, we could do that at this time if you'd like.
Let's do that. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll let you lead us in the roll call. For those who are able, if you will please stand. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Lynette, would you please take a roll, please?
Thank you. When I call your name, if you can please express that you're present. SACOG Director Bulahan.
Here.
Desmond. Absent. Gallardo. Absent. Gog. Absent. Guerrero. Absent. Harris.
Here.
Lauren.
Here.
Saragosa. Absent. Vice Chair Soon.
Here.
Chair Jennings.
Here.
And then our external members, Shanteo Arroyo. Absent. Ami Barnes.
Present.
Woodrow Deloria. Absent. Elisa Herrera. Absent. Maria Chacon Nistat.
Here.
Kendra Lewis. Absent. Marco Lizarraga,
Here.
Raul Martinez.
Here.
Christine Tien, absent, and William Walker.
Here.
Thank you.
We're still waiting. Is that correct?
We are, yes.
Okay.
And I can, Chair Jennings, I can let you know that we do not have any public communications at this time.
And our first item is the consent for the remote working group meeting.
Right, and that item allows us to proceed with the meeting remotely. And so that's what our holdup is, Chair. But I'm in touch with one of our members, and she should be joining us here shortly.
Okay. So as I said earlier, I'm really excited to get to know each one of you. And I wanted to, I'd love to have had you do an introduction, but I don't want to do it and someone miss out on the introduction. So I'm trying my best to be patient, which I have no patience, by the way, in case you don't know me. I'm very short on patience, but I'm being patient because my wife is looking over my shoulder. So she's saying, be calm, come on, relax, it's gonna be okay. And she's right, it is gonna be okay. We're gonna have a great meeting. We're gonna have a great year. And that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about the opportunity to work together to have a great year. And so, you know, I ask the question all the time, and I'm just talking, so I'm not in the meeting. I ask the question all the time, what does the acronym TEAM stand for? And some people know that and some people don't, right? And so those who have heard me ask this question before, you can answer only after our new members get the opportunity to answer first. And so the acronym, TEAM is an acronym. And for those who have been on teams, they know how important a team is. And the acronym TEAM stands for what? Ah, I see you, Jesse. What you got?
I just want you to know that knowing that I was going to be in a meeting with you this morning, I looked it up. I actually did because I couldn't remember the last word, but together everyone achieves more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Give her
So
a round
now
of
it's in my
applause, Will.
notes.
Good job. Good job.
And look at this. And on that note, we have our 11th member. It did it. That was the magic, Director Lauren. That was the
Outstanding. So that theme is one of the themes that I want us to all focus on. That individually, we know we can be, we can go fast individually. It's an African proverb. If you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. And so this is a team, and we're going to act as a team. We're going to work as a team. We're going to make great things happen as a team. So I'm excited for that opportunity. We've got our 11th member. And so we are now set to go. We can get going through the meeting. I know you got busy days. And so at this point in time, are we ready for the consent, approval of the consent?
We are, Chair Jennings, and we'll note for the record that SACOG Director Guerrero is here for the record. And then, yes, our first agenda item is the consent item, which approves holding this meeting remotely. And so
with that,
yes,
I'd look for a motion if there is one.
So moved.
So seconded.
Okay. I think Member Soon moved it, and Member Lauren seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
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 You have to do a roll call
Can
vote.
we do that, or do you need a roll call?
Yes, and
roll call. I'll go through
Okay.
that quickly so we can get going. If you can please indicate your vote. Director Bull.
Lynette, sorry. Lynette, sorry. For the record, was there any public comment?
No, there's no public communications or public comment.
Thank you.
Director Bulahan.
Aye.
Desmond absent. Gallardo absent. Gog absent. Guerrero.
Aye.
Harris,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Zaragoza. Absent Vice Chair Soon,
Aye.
Chair Jennings,
Yes.
and external members Shante Arroyo,
Yes.
thank you. Ami Barnes,
Yes.
Woodrow Deloria, absent. Elisa Herrera, absent. Maria Chacon-Nistet,
Aye.
Kendra Lewis, absent. Marco Lizarraga,
Aye.
Raul Martinez,
Yes.
Christine Tien, absent, and William Walker.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Would you now introduce item number 2, which is an information item?
Information item number 2 is the welcome and the agenda overview. And that actually, Chair Jennings, that has my name on that. I just wrote the item, but that I believe is for you.
Okay. So I do want to welcome each and every one of you, and I think you heard this before, with the exception of Martha. I want to welcome you. I'm glad that you are a part of this group. And we're going to have an exciting meeting today, and we're going to have an exciting year in front of us. In case you don't know, some of the outcomes that we want to do for the working group for 2023, we want to build a better understanding and support among key stakeholders and board members for the SACOG's Racial Equity Action Plan implementation. Better understand and define key components of a meaningful community engagement processes. Develop regional equity indicators that SACOG will collect and report on a regular basis. Provide recommendations to the SACOG board on assessing equity impacts on proposed policy decisions. And based on the REIT progress reports, make recommendations to the SACOG board on any changes to the REIT and to increase its effectiveness and impact. And so those are some of the working group outcomes that we have as it stands today for this. I'm sure there will be more as we work together, but that's where we start today. And so at this point in time, I want to welcome you. The agenda is pretty short today. We'll go through introductions and orientations for each of the working group members. And then any other matters that we have that you'd like to bring or the public would like to bring. And the public is invited and has the opportunity to participate by phone, by virtual, and or they can go into the SACOG office. And so we are always welcoming the public to engage and get involved with us in our meetings. And so again, welcome. And I've done the agenda overview. Is there any other thing I need to do, Lynette, as it relates to item number 2?
No, we're all set. Thank you.
Okay, would you introduce item number 3, please?
Yes, item number 3 is an information item. It's the introduction and orientation of the Race, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group members. And I believe Casey is
Sure.
kicking that off.
Good morning, Chair Jennings and everyone here on the working group. My name is Casey Lazan. I'm Deputy Executive Director here at SACOG. I'm the one of the main staff leads that you'll be working with during this working group. And we're at the meat of our agenda now. And what I'd like to do is turn it over actually to Danielle. She is our facilitator and she will be taking us through our introduction and orientation and onboarding. So with that, Danielle, please.
Good morning, everybody. Really happy to be here. Again, my name is Danielle DeRuyter-Williams, and I will be helping to guide you through these conversations in the coming months. Can you all just confirm that you can see my slides now that I'm sharing my screen? Okay, great, awesome. So to kick us off, we thought that spending some time giving you all a chance to share a bit more about yourselves, get to know one another was a high priority. You're going to be doing decision-making in this space. You're going to be working on a number of different issues, many of them very personal as much as they are a part of our broader work lives or organizational responsibilities. And so laying some foundation around around knowing one another and building those relationships we know is essential to the success of this body. And so we are going to invite each individual to share a bit about themselves, and then we'll move forward with our other items. So I will move us forward to that. So here's your guidance. And we ask you to keep it 1 to 2 minutes because there's plenty of people here and we want to make sure that everyone is heard. If you would be so kind as to share your name, if you want to share pronouns, that's okay as well. Your organization that you represent, if that's relevant. A little bit about maybe the constituency that you represent. So kind of who is the community that you're a part of and how are you kind of bringing those perspectives into this working group, into this space? And then what brings you to this work? Why were you interested in joining this working group? What are you excited about? What really moves you? I know that's a lot to cover in like 2 minutes, but cut and paste wherever makes the most sense. Is there anyone who wants to kick us off, get us started on this item?
Martha Guerrero, I can start.
Thank you, Martha.
I can't see if anybody else's hand is up. Sorry with this, but it's very helpful to have and getting to know one another. So I'm Martha Guerrero, and sort of a new mayor. This is my second term, and council member. I'm a social worker by trade, and also a legislative advocate for Los Angeles County. And I advocate for social services for our most vulnerable populations. And I'm here for REI also, as for my own personal lived experience as a single young mom, and raising 2 children, experiencing firsthand the effects of, being Latina with 2 young children, and, not being able to find housing, being rejected from housing, from renting a home. And just also seeing it, when I had a partner who was white, and noticing the contrast of how treated compared to how he was treated. And I really didn't know exactly what that was until I saw it from that lens. And understanding that there are those with privilege and there are those that don't have it. And there are barriers set in our lives that really impact the quality of life. And I ran for mayor because I really have been hearing that on the ground in our community, for one. And then also from others, I wanted to, bring that voice to city council, to have people be represented in our decisions. And I still think, I feel like we have a ways to go. There's a lot of work that needs to get done. So I'm the mayor of West Sacramento. I don't know if I mentioned that. And so that's what brings me to this work. Seeing that we have an opportunity, and I'm really grateful for Chair Jennings and Lucas Frericks, who's the supervisor, for creating and establishing REI so that we can take a look at the nuances that are making it very difficult for those in our community. I have a diverse community. I have Latinos, I have Sikh, I have, the Muslim population. I have new immigrants from the Ukraine and Russian population who have language barriers. So I can see that it's always a challenge for us to be able to, break it down for others to be included. So I want to be able to create a more inclusive environment, just not here in West Sacramento, but regionally. And I just thank you for this opportunity to be a part of this membership, and very grateful for everybody else who's here with us to see what we can do to help boost our community and bring them up.
Thank you so much, Martha. And to make sure that we keep moving, feel ready to jump in as soon as the next person wraps up. Who wants to go next?
I'll be happy to go next. Please, Jesse, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure. I heard somebody else. My name is Jessie Lauren. I'm a council member in the city of Winters. This is my 7th year. As a city council member, I was a school teacher for about 20 years. And in the capacity of being a school teacher, I really embraced being the teacher to start a club for gay, straight, lesbian, questioning, kids, and supporting the Latino community, and really advocating for kids that were poor, didn't have food. And I took a lot of flack for that as a school teacher in Travis Unified School District, at Air Force School. But it didn't stop me at all. And I just want to go back to my roots. My mom was Irish, my father Mexican. When they went to buy a house, the realtor took my mom to West Covina Hills. And then when the realtor met my father, it was La Puente, El Monte, and Baldwin Park. And of course, we were limited to where we could live, and we moved to Baldwin Park. And I have that lived experience. As a council member, I jumped right into the Hispanic Advisory Committee in Winters, created a nonprofit Winters Community Corazon, and we're just really trying to help serve the community. So to me, race, equity, and inclusion is the foundation of our democracy. We have to find ways to have equal opportunity, and that's, I'm in it to win it. So that's where I'm coming from. Thanks. Next.
I'll be next. Shall I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Marco.
Okay, so first of all, of course, that so many of us Mexicans came here when I was a kid, and we came to work in the fields. First town that I ever knew in this country was Fowler, next to Fresno, and it was quite an experience because I used to get tickets for speaking Spanish, but I couldn't speak English in school. So I've suffered a lot of the housing problems as a farm worker with my family. So it's not surprising that today, after having had the opportunity through affirmative action to go to the university and get an education. And clearly it was going to be a simple decision for me that in the long run, what I wanted to do was to help our people. And gradually our people became everybody who's in need. Okay, so I went beyond just my nationality, but that's been my passion. And as such, I became in 2009, the executive director of La Cooperativa Campesina. And what we do is we serve farm workers throughout the state. And we serve on the average about 153,000 people. And out of those, 55,000 are farm workers. And we provide primarily employment and training. Right now, we're in the process of distributing 48,000 farm workers $600. And that has been my passion, to help people and make a better community. And as such, in Woodland, living in Woodland, I've been in the planning commission for about 12 years, which was also a natural for me because at one time I was a consultant in housing, and I also ran a planning department in Imperial Valley. So I've always done work to help my community, to help our people, to help the needy, and that's really my passion. And I'm very honored to be in this group to see what I can contribute to help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marco. And I think, Ami, you were next. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other a little bit better, if that works for you all. Ami, did you want to go?
Sure, thank you. My name is Ami Zenzele Barnes. Pronouns are she and they, and I serve as the Diversity and Equity Manager for the City of Sacramento. What excites me about this work professionally, it brings me a great deal of satisfaction to work with our city staff and programs and leaders to create systems change. I bring facilitative leadership. Our office is positioned to work with all different offices across the city and local government. And so I feel that this is such a great opportunity to create and build off that facilitative leadership and systems change, because ultimately we want this work to have systems change. And that's what excites me about the work. And this opportunity with this working group is to accelerate that and move shared language, shared understanding on a regional level of what we can do from our prospective agencies and organizations. So I'm really excited to get to know everyone and how we can elevate this work beyond our organizations and learn from each other. That's the other point that excites me as well as a lifelong learner. I'm really fascinated and curious to see how all of us are approaching this work and what we could elevate for our communities and how we can bring this work to have really powerful impact to our communities and to people that that we need to rebuild trust with, that we need to have greater and deeper relationships and engagement with. So I see this as a really great opportunity to do that, and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who's going to jump in next?
I can jump in.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Maria Chacon-Neisted. I'm the Communications and Public Affairs Director for the City of Rancho Cordova. I oversee communications, legislation, and community engagement for our extremely diverse residents and businesses here. We have over 80,000 folks who live in Rancho Cordova and over 65,000 who are employed through businesses here. We have residents who speak over 80 languages. And so extremely important to the city that we have, REI here represented. On a personal level, this is a passion project for me. I am half Mexican and half Lebanese, so grew up with a lot of relatives speaking Spanish. My uncle served in the California legislature for 22 years. He was one of the first members of now it's called the Latino caucus. At the time, it was the Chicano caucus. And my dad was a broadcaster in San Diego, also, Spanish speaking, and he and my uncle experienced a lot of discrimination. I saw that firsthand. I'm taking a certificate course right now through Cornell University, and that is for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's only now that I'm actually able to understand the concepts, put labels on the concepts of the things that I myself have experienced throughout my life. So very, very excited to be working with all of you to bring some positive change to our greater community, and I look forward to it.
Thank you so much, Maria.
I'll go ahead and jump in here. Hello, everyone. My name is Shante Arroyo. I'm representing Yuba and Sutter County up here a little bit north of Sacramento. I work with Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture, which is an arts council that focuses on making the arts accessible to everyone in the community. And really, I'm here because I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants who came here to seek out a better life. And I've heard that story a few times now from some of the other people here. And as a Native and Mexican woman, it's always been super important to me that inclusion and equity, as well as decolonization, be a large part of work moving forward in this country, given the history. So yeah, it's always navigated my life and not only personally, but also professionally. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of you to help make our region a little bit better.
I'll jump in. Hi, everybody. Darren Soon. I'm council member for the city of Elk Grove. We're a very diverse community of 180,000 people. But I was born and raised in Sacramento, and I'm also a son of immigrants. My mom came from Hong Kong in about 67. My dad's family immigrated around 1927 in the Delta in Cortland. So on my dad's side, my dad's maternal side, we sharecrop in the pear farms and orchards in Cortland. And for me, it's really interesting to me is that I discovered a lot of these things we're dealing with and we're talking about now are things that I'm only discovering now. I think as a child of immigrants, I feel like I've benefited from the struggles that my parents and grandparents and great grandparents went through. And I was, allowed to, go to school and achieve whatever things I could do on my own, and not have the hindrances that they had to go through. And so I feel like there's a responsibility for me to give back as I learn more about the struggles that they endured and what others are enduring now and have endured in this role. I just feel that need to give back. And I also, from the Asian side of things, as a Chinese descent, I've also learned about how the Asian culture is non-monolithic, and there's so many different struggles within the Asian cultures and Asian communities. And as I look through the statistics of the Brookings Institute, it paints one picture, but I also have learned there's actually a much different picture within the Asian community. So as a role model, as a representative of that area, or that culture, again, feeling the need, the responsibility to give back. And as Shanti said, I want to elevate the entire region, because as Chair Jennings said, together we achieve more. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I'm also I'm looking forward to all the sports references in these meetings, and I'm also mindful that Chair Jennings likes to keep a brisk pace, so I'll try to move quickly through my own description. So my name is Raul Martinez. You can also call me Raul Martinez if you have an affinity for rolling your R's and maybe proficiency in doing so. But really happy to be here. As I'm actually a native San Franciscan, born in the Mission, and actually grew up in central Mexico. And there's a whole range of stories about why we came back. But son of a garbage man and ESL teacher, and so this is issues related to sort of race, equity, and inclusion, sort of deeply personal for me. I work at Placer County Health and Human Services. We're committed to building a healthier community together, and I also serve on Commissioner for First Five Placer and on the board of the Placer Community Foundation. I raise those things because I think it's important to bring together the arms of the social impact sector to build health and to make sure that we do that in our communities. I think one of the things is really, in terms of who we serve all residents, right? But we serve those that have historically sort of been left behind. Again, this is really deeply personal work. When I first started sort of professionally, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but one of my first gigs was doing focus groups out in Woodland with monolingual Spanish-speaking moms. And it was one of the first times where I realized, like, oh my gosh, no one's ever asked them questions about sort of their experiences with the services and experiences with the system. So I'm a big believer in amplifying community voice. And also seeing the critical role that government has played historically in perpetuating inequity, and now the role that it has in advancing equity. So really happy to do this with really smart people, and I think I I did that all under 2 minutes. So
I'll go next. William Walker, Workforce Development Manager for the Sacramento Employment and Training Agency. My constituents are probably everyone in Sacramento County who needs employment, who's looking for a movement in their lives and trying to reach that next step. What brings me to this is that first I read SACOG's report. It leaned in on race. Anything that leans in on race, I really do respect, because that's a hard topic to cover. I am a third generation removed from slavery. I grew up in the South during the Civil Rights Movement, kind of saw all of the civil rights things from Dr. King's assassination to the riots in the South. So what brings me here is just trying to find a way to look for a better way for people to live, a better way for people to move forward. I don't necessarily see myself as anything other than a public servant. I've been a public servant for the last 40 years, and I will continue to serve the public as long as the public needs me to provide services. I have worked with some folks on this board, And I do happen to know quite a few people on this board personally and respect and honor their service as well. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
I don't mind going now, but good morning, everybody. My name is Sean Harris. Right now I'm the vice mayor of the city of Yuba City, and very happy to be here. And I know we haven't gotten everybody yet, but just seeing some of the backgrounds of everybody from the citizen panel, it's just amazing. And so I'm even more excited to be a part of this work. You know, up here in Yuba City, we do have we consider Yuba City, Marysville, Yuba Sutter community. It's kind of like one. And we have an extensive, surprising amount of diversity here. But we do have I think I sense of an issue of they're not other than people with this color, they're not, for whatever reason, they're not as conspicuous out there as we would like them to be, although we try. Shantae does some really good work at Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture, and that's one of the many programs that they have to try to do that. But for whatever reason, I sense, and maybe I'm wrong, that they're struggling for folks to be out there and proud, and you know, there are some that do well, but I think we could do a lot better. And so if we, as part of this work, I would like to be regionally, like Darren said, help everybody together move forward and get past some of these barriers. Raul mentioned government being part of the problem, and that's embarrassing and sad and tragic. And I think we have a responsibility to step up and mend those wrongs and change the paradigm and change the mindset so everybody has an equal opportunity to work hard and thrive. So, you know, I'm not even running for re-election. I just may gross myself out talking like that, but I really do mean it. You know, it's sad and tragic that we have people living amongst us that face so much adversity, and sometimes it's kind of running in the background, and it's tragic. And so if we can implement policies that obligate folks who might otherwise not do so to treat folks fairly and equitably and provide opportunities moving forward for everybody to thrive, that's why I'm here, man. Thank you very much.
Yes, government is a tremendous lever for change. Absolutely. Can you use the raised hand feature if you have not gone yet, just so I can make sure to track?
Director Gallardo.
Yeah, Director Jill Gallardo and Director Pam Buellon.
Great.
I'll jump in and go if there's a good time.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Greetings from Calexico, California, as I'm very close to crossing over in a little bit. Jill Gallardo, I am a city council member with the city of Rockland. I will tell you that the Gallardo family arrived in Rockland in about 1911 from Spain. My husband's grandparents on both sides of his family, and Rockland was incredibly diverse. It was Finnish family, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, and Irish, and then we lost it. And then all of a sudden, the last 10 years and even more, the last 5, we're beginning to get more diverse as we see a lot of people moving from the Bay Area in particular. Myself personally, I'm so excited about that. And I'm so appreciate the remarks that we just heard also about inclusion. Personally, I was always incredibly proud of my grandfather, Native American, our Goshoot and Shoshone heritage. It's been a little more than a little disconcerting. It turns out that DNA proves that rumor that I never wanted to believe. And I was always so proud of that heritage that technically my grandfather is not my birth grandfather. And I am not the Native American that I thought. And apparently I sent my son to Notre Dame for a reason, because I'm 45% Irish that I was unaware of. So it must have been deep in the genes. So I'm very, not gonna lie, that's been pretty rocked my world a little bit. So I think it's opened me up to even more to looking to see what else other people are experiencing. So I'm really looking forward to this. I appreciate it so much. I appreciate that we reach in particular to all groups. I think this is a wonderful group together, and just looking at us as a group together, we do demonstrate clearly that diversity. So I'm excited to work with this team.
Thanks so much. And Member Boulahan, I think you're the last one.
Okay, hi, I'm Pamela Bullahan, and I'm like since January 10 of this year, I'm the mayor of Ileton. But I first got involved with the city as treasurer, appointed in 1997, ran unopposed. And in 2011, they had a special election for like the vacancy on council, because the one that was leaving council, I guess, had to go work at the graveyard of the Oakland Post Office. So anyway, so I ran against two ex-mayors, and I was shocked to have won the total of 50 votes. So I ran unopposed until 2016, when I placed third for 2 seats. And then so I came back on in 2018, was vice mayor, and then got reelected again. And I was shocked that I got first place. So as far as my work life, I'm a retired federal employee, Department of Defense. I retired from Travis in 2015. But before that, I spent the last 19 years at McClellan from 82 to 2001, and for 4 years at Defense Depot Tracy. But then since 2018, I work for the state. But yeah, and that's basically me in a nutshell. But my dad, he's from, my parents are Filipino. So my dad moved to the Delta 1930. And he moved to Ileton in 1930, but basically around the Delta, Sherman Island, Tyler Island. And then we bought a house in Ileton in 67. And because my mom said, well, you keep missing the bus, so I have to drive you to school, so we have to move into town. And so as far as community involvement before council, I was president of Filipino community in Ileton from 87 to 2000, and was with Filipino American National Historical Society in 2004, 2005. But that's basically me in a nutshell. Did I get it under 2 minutes?
I wasn't actually timing you well. I thought about putting a timer up, but I decided against it. Chair Jennings, would you like to share as well? Or
Absolutely.
Would you like us to
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed listening to each of your experiences. And I do want to share my experience. And I just want to take you on a story with me for a quick second. I'll try to be under 2 minutes, but most people know I can't say my name in 2 minutes. So I'm an 8-year-old kid, and my parents moved from the comforts of my school and my community in Washington, D.C., and they moved to Upper D.C., right next to Silver Spring, Maryland. For those of you who know, that area in 1963, 1961, I'm 8 years old, 1961, was not incorporated by Black people. And so my parents took a bold move, and they bought a house that they weren't supposed to be able to buy. And they made the move to get there. And as they got there, they met with a lot of resistance. And I, going to an all-white school now, after coming from an all-Black school, met with a lot of resistance as well. And I think that's what started my advocacy to say that he or she who is left behind in the great race of life must forever remain behind, unless we are committed to doing something to change that. And so, like many of you, and I heard most of you say this, especially Bill Walker, I'm a public servant and I serve the people. I don't like for people to call me a politician. I work in a political arena and I understand that. But I'm a public servant that works on behalf of the people to right the wrongs of the past and the present, and to make sure that they don't go into the future, so that it stops in my generation and we become the change that we all want to see. And it happens right now. And so this work is very personal to me because I've lived it. I'm the one who they called all kinds of names that I couldn't understand. And I would go home and ask my parents, what does that mean? And they couldn't tell me, they wouldn't tell me how bad that was for people to say those kinds of things about me. But you could feel it in your soul. And so whenever I see wrong, we must turn wrong into right. and I will do everything within my power in this lifetime to be an agent of change, to be able to see that I have made a difference. And I'm reading this book called The Autobiography of a People, and it goes back over 500 years. And these are people who have suffered, but have endured. And if they can do it, I can do it. And I can help others to do it. So that is my commitment to my work, to being a public servant, to being an agent of change. And I'm happy to work with each one of you in this field.
Wonderful, thank you. And Lynette, that brings us to the end of this item.
Thank you.
This is all one item, so we can continue on into the next part of it. And that is briefly, we're talking about working group member and SACOG staff roles and responsibilities. We have met with most of you individually just to, say hello and introduce ourselves as SACOG staff, but you are all here, working group members, to play the role of guiding, overseeing, and advising on the implementation of SACOG's Racial Equity Action Plan. SACOG staff are working on the implementation of that plan. We will, over the course of the next 2 years, be bringing you progress reports on that. We will be doing that in such a way that we're trying to allow you to be able to see into each of the actions that we are. Can you hear me over? There's a really loud, I'm sorry. There's a really loud blower outside, but if you can hear me, I will proceed. Okay. The implementation of each of these actions so that we can be transparent about the implementation of this action plan, be able to tap into your expertise with all of the backgrounds and perspectives that you bring so that you can give guidance on how this is going and ultimately on are there any changes that we may need to make to increase the effectiveness of this plan over time. So we will be bringing progress to you on that, so that by the end of this first year, we hope that you'll be able to have enough information that you can provide some recommendations to the SACOG board on any changes they may need to make. And the action plan has some very specific roles for the working group to play. You will see that in the outcomes that are listed for this working group for the year, and those will show up as topics for you at your working group meetings. One of those is on developing and providing guidance on the development of racial equity indicators for the region, because monitoring those indicators is a key action in the plan, as well as helping us to define what meaningful community engagement means. That's a foundational piece of this of many of the actions in the action plan to help us to achieve the goals that are set forth there. So that's what we ask of you. We will provide options for you to weigh in on individual tasks. Those will be forthcoming. We'll talk about those at the next meeting. But for now, I just wanted to lay that out for you. And then staff, as I said, I will be one of the key staff for this group. James Corliss, your executive director, will be presenting on a number of things to you as well. Lynette Espinoza here, she is the clerk of the board. She is making sure that you are able to get to these meetings, know what you need. And then we will have other staff who will be presenting to you over the course of the 2 years, and you'll get to meet them as well. So with that, I think that concludes this brief item. I'm happy to take any questions. And if there are none, we can then move into an introduction to SACOG and the action plan. Okay. Seeing no questions, we'll move into a brief overview of SACOG and the Racial Equity Action Plan. I'm going to turn it over to James to start this.
Great, thanks, Casey. Hope everybody can hear me okay. Let me know if you cannot. Okay, so we just wanted to kind of give people a little bit of a grounding. We've talked to many of the public members in advance of this first meeting, but good to get everybody to try to sort of level set here. Is there a way?
Oh, just let Danielle know. Next slide.
Okay, okay. There we go. Can everybody see there we go. All right. Everybody see that? Everybody see the large? Okay, great, awesome. Okay. So last year, the agency and the board undertook a number of really important things. One, of course, is the Racial Equity Action Plan that is in your packet and that this working group is going to be overseeing the implementation of. But the other two last year was, which was several years in the making, but a revision of the strategic plan for SACOG. And part of that update to the strategic plan was to adopt 3 overarching goals, often sometimes referred to as the triple bottom line: equity, economy, environment. So these are the overarching goals that we're trying to actually achieve through all of our work. Many people think of SACOG as a transportation planning agency, and for good reason, because a lot of our programs, as you're going to hear about this year, a lot of our work, our grant making, our planning grants, our engagement with local communities comes through transportation. But we are trying to achieve larger goals with transportation investments. And we're trying to actually maximize, not trade off among, but maximize equity, economy, and environment in everything we do. That is not easy. And much like racial equity, we're on a journey here and we're taking some first steps. But that triple bottom line is now part of our strategic plan, part of our agency goals. We revised our mission statement and we've created a vision for our work and the agency in the region, which sort of guides everything. So you'll hear a lot of references to the 3 E's, the triple bottom line: equity, economy, environment, as we move through the work of this working group. So next slide. One of the earlier programs, and maybe I'll back up a little bit, and I've spoken to many of you along with Casey. I would say that while so much of the work of any council of governments or regional planning agency or regional agency that deals with transportation and air quality and climate change makes such a huge difference in terms of equity and narrowing the gaps between disparities among different demographics. We really didn't do much, honestly, very intentionally around equity, around racial equity, and really talk about race before 2020. And the summer of 2020, with the murder of George Floyd and the civil unrest and protest, brought our board chair and vice chair together at that time. Director Guerrero mentioned Lucas Frericks, former board member of the SACOG, came together and formed the first Race Equity Inclusion Working Group, worked through a couple of issues from the summer of 2020 through the fall, one of which was actually to set aside some transportation funding to create a program we're calling Engage, Empower, Implement. And it was really acknowledging that we have not done a very good job at really engaging our most underserved communities, our communities of color, our lower income communities, our communities around the region. We haven't engaged them very well in the work that we do. We haven't done as good a job as we believe we need to do at listening to them, engaging them, asking them the right questions, partnering with our local governments to do this. So the board in 2020 put some money aside, $3 million, to start really a community planning program to really try to go upstream and engage communities early on to understand their challenges, the opportunities, and honestly for them to be able to shape and drive a lot of the investments that flow through SACOG, as well as the state and the federal governments. You'll be probably hearing a little bit more about this program as we go forward. The board has heard quite a bit about it. In fact, next week they'll get another update on Engage, Empower, Implement. And actually at our April board meeting, we'll be holding it offsite in Roseville, where we'll be hearing about an effort through the Invest Health initiative to engage communities in downtown Roseville to be able to improve health equity and health outcomes. So next slide. So along with that summer of 2020, the fall of 2020, that first incarnation of the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group, we commissioned an audit, a racial equity audit, and that audit was presented to the board and to us in November of 2020. And I will say it was not without controversy. It was really the first time that we had asked the question, how well we are doing in terms of being an inclusive organization, how well we're doing on racial equity, community engagement, and the answer was not a positive one. The answer showed that we had a lot of work to do. And even that the agency and the board itself just had a long way to go in terms of issues of racial equity. As often happens in even years, in November of even years, we have an election in the region. We had a lot of new board members join our board. We have a 31-member board. We have 12 new members in the fall of 2020 join our board. And by the way, last November, we had 8 new members. So we have 20 new members on our board since the summer of 2020. But next slide. We had that audit commission, the board turned over, and then over the last 2 years, Chair Jennings, the chair of this working group, chaired the Race Equity Inclusion Working Group for the last 2 years. And as we've told many of you, the work of that group is very focused around figuring out how to best incorporate racial equity into our long-range plan called our Blueprint. Second, developing a racial equity statement of change and commitment the board adopted last February. And third and finally, developing, which took quite a bit of time and a lot of staff work and a lot of the engagement of the working group last year, developing the racial equity action plan, which you all are now here today to begin to figure out, sort of unpack, understand, and help us implement. I think Casey had mentioned earlier as well, and I just want to throw some of these stats up here. In 2018, we joined with the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, the Sacramento Metro Chamber, Valley Vision, and the Sacramento Asian Pacific Chamber. And we commissioned the Brookings Institution to come into the region and to take a look at our data across our entire region, and particularly our outcomes and our economic data. And one thing among others in terms of data, I want to mention to folks, because sometimes people work very locally or they work in their county. As SACOG, of course, we look across all 6 counties, Yolo, Sacramento, Yuba Sutter, El Dorado, Placer. And across those 6 counties by the 2020 census, number 1, we are the fastest growing community region in California, number 1 in 2020. And secondly, we just crossed a threshold across the 6 counties to majority people of color. So those are both very important statistics in terms of understanding where we are as a region. And I think honestly reflected in many of you here today and describing your lived experiences and how you come to this group. But some of the other statistics here, I'm going to roll through these relatively quickly, but when Brookings came in, they looked at our economy and they looked at our population, they looked at our data. They said basically the following: you're one of the most diverse regions in the nation. However, outcomes by race, ethnicity, and income make you very divided. So you're very diverse, but you're also very divided. You have structural inequities that if you don't pay attention to and intentionally tackle, you will not be successful. Now, I will say, and Director Soon mentioned this too, right? There's a lot in this data that I don't know that we want to get into today, and maybe you're all very well aware of it, that you need to unpack. So we have, this is basically showing educational attainment for our larger 6-county region. A lot of this, by the way, is on our website in our regional progress reports. So we see when we look very generally, white, Hispanic, Asian, Black, and other, about these disparities by educational attainment. As Director Soon mentioned, if you just unpack numbers through Asian American communities, you'll see huge differentiation just within that. So I want to be very mindful and note that. But again, big picture at a high level disparities. So next slide. Looking at household income by race and ethnicity. Once again, we see these kinds of disparities, while there are the other stories under the hood here. And it is not to say that poverty doesn't affect everybody and all races, and also that we have a lot of geographic sort of rural poverty that is really bad and is a big problem. And last slide on the data here, next slide. And here's something else that we think about a lot, and I think the working group last year did a lot of work on to develop our racial equity statement, which is in terms of housing cost burden. We know this falls very unevenly in terms of the cost of housing, and the cost of affording to be able to live here falls very unevenly. In terms of also in terms of housing, sort of housing wealth and home ownership, there's a huge racial wealth gap in terms of home ownership and assets that are either locked up in or not in terms of home ownership. So next slide. So just giving you a bit of a sense of some of the data that I think began to, even before 2020, really motivate us and some of our economic partners. As you'll hear a lot from us this year, and I think maybe many of you know this is true, but it's certainly in our world. While we have transportation funding that flows through SACOG, and we have transportation funding that flows directly to cities and counties, we are also now a sort of a newer development, and just in the world of transportation and infrastructure, is there are more now competitive grants available before than ever. So at the state level and the federal government, there's now more money available because of the bipartisan infrastructure law and a number of things that have happened in the state of California. So more money than ever, but that money is not guaranteed to us. We have to compete for it. And this is just an excerpt from one of the federal grant programs called REIs. And it's basically showing you that you have to have meaningful engagement with residents to ensure equity considerations for underserved communities through the life cycle of the project. So if we are going to compete as a region just for infrastructure dollars, we're going to have to get serious about community engagement, about equity, about understanding infrastructure projects that can really narrow the disparity gaps, or else we will not be able to compete. We cannot check the box on these things. We have to be genuine in terms of how we develop our transportation projects, how we position them for state and federal funds. So next slide. Okay.
That's me. All right. I'm going to take just a few minutes to explain to you how we developed the Racial Equity Action Plan and why you see the goals that are in there. So that gives you some context as you are doing your work over the next couple of years. And then I also want to make sure if you are able to hang on, we want to get you, make sure that you have time to go through shared values and community agreements. So just know that we're trying to make sure that we get to do that today. So once the board, the SACOG board adopted our racial equity statement at the beginning of 2022, there were a number of commitments in that statement. And if you have been able to dig into the action plan, you'll see those there. And we immediately, SACOG started to apply those commitments to the development of the action plan. So we found Venture with Purpose, which is the consultants that Danielle is with, to hold a bunch of listening sessions for us with the groups that we typically work with. So with our cities and counties, with our transit agency partners, with community-based organizations and other partners in the region that we work with each of the members of the REI working group at the time, to really try to understand, okay, here we are, SACOG has just adopted this statement of change in commitment. We want to develop an action plan. What do we need to start with? And so from those listening sessions, we learned a lot. And the learnings were translated then into the action plan. The goals that you see in that action plan were the best that we could, a direct result of all of those listening sessions. And in that plan, what we have, we continue to apply each of these commitments. You'll see that as you go through that plan. So we're looking to support, because we are a member agency, a council of governments. We are also trying to ensure that as we implement this plan, that we are supporting our member and partner agencies as well. There are a number of actions that we also can take as an agency that sets policy and invests funds, and then committing to measuring how we're doing, to see are the things that we're doing, the actions we're undertaking actually making the difference, helping us reach the goals we're trying to achieve. Next slide, please. And this is just a shot of all of those different, of each of those commitments. Those are straight out of the statement of change and commitment. And they are what guided us in the development of the goals, the objectives, and each of the individual actions. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through each of the three focus areas of the action plan, not to read the goals to you, but to, again, give you a sense of why these goals are here. So we have a category of operations. So this is all of the work that SACOG undertakes internally to be able to do ultimately the business we do. And these goals are focused on really, a lot of it is focused on today and how we build towards a more equitable future. So the goals are focused on who are our employees here now, and how can we make this a safe and inclusive place for them? And as we are hiring and seeking new employees, because every organization does that, right? Hopefully we have that ability to be able to attract new employees, that when we do that, that we are doing that in a way that, again, starts to reflect the diversity of our region. And then we also do business in our community, right? We have contracts with vendors in the community. And so how can we reduce barriers to communities or to anyone who would want to do business with us, but for structural barriers that are in place? Next slide, please. In the second category of programs, so this is all of the projects, the funding programs, the technical assistance that we do externally with communities, with partner agencies. We are trying to, with these programs, focus on understanding who we serve and incorporating into our programs what we learn from them. And so this first goal is, it has a lot of words, but this really tells you specifically what we are trying to do. We are trying to increase engagement with community representatives of Black, Indigenous, Asian, Pacific Islander, Hispanic, Latino, and communities of colors, along with low-income, rural, urban, and other underrepresented communities to help shape SACOG's projects and programs. I did read that one out loud because I think it's very important. This was really designed by the working group when we were developing that racial equity statement, and it was also came through loud and clear in our listening sessions that we need to do this. Next slide, please. And then the other two goals really build from that. So by engaging, can we then learn from that and increase funding for programs and projects that help us to achieve ultimate equity goals? And then as we do that, we also, being in a community with other government agencies, we want to learn and support member and local partner agencies who are also trying to do this work. Next slide, please. And then finally, in the category of board practice, because the SACOG board sets our policies, sets where our funding investment happens, this set of goals is focused on the board being able to deepen its understanding of how race, ethnicity, income, and geography affect social outcomes of communities throughout this very big, very diverse region. That the board includes racial equity impacts in its triple bottom line decision-making, the triple bottom line being equity, economy, and environment, as James said at the beginning of this, this presentation. And then really an accountability goal that the board maintains consistent engagement in the racial equity action plan implementation process. So while they adopted the plan, we want to make sure that all of SACOG, not just the staff is implementing, but that the board is also able to continue to maintain engagement. And that is where the working group plays a very important role. And I think, and that is the end of my presentation here. And I will look to Danielle and to Chair Jennings to see if we have time for questions or any comments on this.
1 or 2 minutes for questions if there are any.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. Thank you, Casey, for the presentation. I am looking at the Racial Equity and Inclusion Working Group charge. And in the presentation, I saw that there's also an operational goal number 3 around procurement and contracting process. Will we be touching on that? I know we went through the slides. I'm not sure if I missed it in the slides, but I wondered if it was under the operational goals. I think you shared the first 2.
It's under the 3rd, and that is the people that we do business with.
Okay.
Yes, so that
This is worded a little different. Okay, I just wanted to make sure in case there was a change. Okay, thank you very much.
No, that's great. Perfect.
So I did have a question just in terms of the timeline for this. I saw that you mentioned that the big reason is, we're competing for grants in terms of transportation. Can you guys tell us kind of what the timeline looks like for this whole thing? And if this is going to continue regardless of whether we check those boxes or not?
That is a great question. Do you want to answer that? Or do you want me to?
Well, yeah, thank you, Shante. I would say it's very important for everybody to understand if you're just kind of digging into this, this is not a 2-year work plan. That we would kill ourselves and we would just, we don't want to underperform. We want to, and so it is not, this was really, what is in our power, our control. It is somewhat aspirational, but it is doable. But it's not doable over a 2-year period. So partly what we're actually going to be working on, and I think it's in your agenda, and we've given you a few things that are kind of up first, if you will, right? So the definition of meaningful community engagement is going to be something we want to dig into you with. Why? Because that is going to be essential to determine how we structure our transportation programs, how we are, as I said earlier, competitive for transportation grants. The metrics and the measures and the data, right, that show disparities by race, ethnicity, income, those are going to be really important because we want to stand up a reporting mechanism that we can sort of show the dashboard, if you will, to the region of how we do. So in the plan itself, and jump in, or Casey, if you want to add on to this, but in the plan itself, we are not planning to do everything in the first 2 years because we cannot, but we're hoping to achieve all of it because we think as a whole, it is what's important. And then as a working group, we're trying to not give you everything, but actually dig in with you on a few things that we just think it's going to be very helpful for both you all as the public members and then our board members here, our 10 board members, right, to unpack that, spend some time with the issues I just mentioned so that we can bring those back to the board and kind of inform our programs and our practice and our operations.
And for all everyone's knowledge, we'll have a chance to sink our teeth more into the plan itself in the next meeting. So we can kind of put a pin in any remaining questions about the plan. Obviously, you can reach out in the interim time to ask questions, clarifying questions. And we will spend a substantive amount of time in our next session really kind of getting into the weeds there. So appreciate your patience and your enthusiasm to move forward. We wanted to ensure that we laid a solid foundation of the ways that you all plan to work and engage and partner with each other. And we thought what better place to start than with giving an opportunity for folks to think about how we're going to work together from the context of your own core values, right? So what are the values that you bring to collaboration? What are the core values that really drive you to do the work that you do? So we have an activity that will move through relatively quickly, given our time constraints at this point, to start to get at some of that. And then the hope is that we can build some shared community agreements together, right? That we can all agree to as we move through our work together. without further ado, I'll move us forward on that point. So here's the activity. We recognize there's no chat box, there's no breakout rooms or any of that. So we're adapting this to kind of the structure that we have working for us. So step one, I have a slide. The next slide I'll show has a list of a couple dozen core values. You do not have to be limited to that list, but it's a place to start. And we want you to identify 2 or 3 of those that resonate the most with you. This might change day by day, depending on when you're looking at this list. Again, you can select values that aren't on this slide as well. I want you to spend some time writing down those values and a couple of ways that you might practice those in your work in the working group. And I can give you an example of that in a moment. And then out of those 2 to 3 that you select, choose one that you would be willing to speak to or share with the group. We'll probably have to popcorn a little bit, so we might not get to everyone, but we can look for ways to share those out and bring those back in subsequent sessions. So, but choose one that you feel like you could be ready to jump to speak on in the larger group. So to give you an example, perhaps a core value, one that I always lean towards is authenticity. And so authenticity is a core value. It's the way that I come to my work. It's the way that I engage with folks. And so one way that we might practice authenticity in the context of our work together is perhaps using kind of I statements, right? So I authentically can speak to this experience, and I'm going to use I statements when I'm sharing or contributing to a discussion. So that could be a practice, a way to practice authenticity, not the only way, but a way to practice it. And so I'm gonna be quiet for a couple of minutes. I will set a timer of 2 to 3 minutes for you all. Again, step one is to choose 2 or 3 of these values that resonate with you the most. Jot down some ways that you might practice them, and then be prepared to speak to one of them. Any questions about this activity? Okay. All right, I'll start a timer now, and then we'll continue our discussion. Seconds left, minute and a half. 15 more seconds left, and as we start to wrap up, I'm going to share my screen a little bit differently so that we can capture these in real time. All right, there's our timer. So would love to hear from maybe a handful of folks, and if we go relatively quickly, maybe we can capture some more and hear from everybody. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to capture some of the values that you share along the way. So would anyone like to get us started with one of the core values that resonated with you the most?
Well, for me, it's humor.
Do you want to say more about that?
I just the ability to make people be happy. Also, it's the kind of humor that's maybe ironic humor. Is just trying to figure out in life what's serious and what's not serious, and what's life altering and what's not life altering. So my whole life, nothing has ever been as desperate as life altering. So everything is to kind of laugh, be humorous about, and move forward and get the mission done. So yeah, so humor and wisdom are my two core values, but humor most of all.
Thank you, Raul. And folks, feel free to just jump in or raise your hand along the way so that I won't have to unmute every time. Go ahead.
Danielle, there were so many great core values on that list. It was difficult to choose. However, I think for me, maybe the most important one is contribution, because really that entails having an understanding of our role, an understanding of the audience that we're going to serve, and then really in the context of all of this, questioning, challenging, and then, acting to implement, to create positive change.
Thank you, Darren. And then I saw Raul as well.
Okay, yeah, Raul was actually first, but really quick, openness, I felt resonated with me. I agree with Maria, there's so many, but openness, being able to, have a still mind so that you can take in other people's perspectives without any judgment or biasness, from, your own experiences. And I think it's really important so people can feel heard, and you can really understand different perspectives, and so you can move on to having conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Raul, Marco, and then Pamela.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the humor. I sort of thought of another as I was going through, is like, how do we give ourselves, bring a little levity to this work, given the seriousness of this work, and sort of some grace and a little bit of levity. And so I appreciate that. I also was thinking about, which relates to openness, I think, is sort of curiosity. And I think, sort of asking meaningful questions of each and every one of us and of this work. And so I think that sort of dovetails nicely with openness, but maybe not coming too quickly to solutions, but really asking questions, and really asking questions of community. So we might represent a range of communities. We might not have we have some knowledge, but maybe we should ask, and maybe we should ask good, tough questions as well.
Thank you. Marco.
Okay, so one of the things that caught me, and I attribute it to the function of age. So wisdom and knowledge really attracted me, and knowledge more than anything else, because I really feel strongly that in what I do today, and what I've done for since 1972, that I need to share, at least, especially with my staff, what I have accumulated in the process of trying to do good for other people and through programs, that I really need to share those experiences with my staff, that it is a learning process, that it's important for them, because at the end of the day, wisdom is nothing more than an accumulation of experience combined with knowledge. And that is really important to me. And I think it's probably because of my age, you know. I'm only 21, but you know, no. But I really think that really caught me, because I think it's really important.
Thanks so much. Pamela and then Jill.
Hi, I'm thinking learning would be pretty important, because like you learn something new every day, you learn other perspectives, learn other experiences. And like you can like probably brainstorm and like try to come across to a like try to work towards an answer or a consensus. It's basically what it is. So because like if you don't have all your information, you can't make an informed decision.
Thank you.
That benefits everybody.
Thank you. Jill.
Thank you. Well, the two that jumped out to me, because I'm a public servant, and most importantly is the leadership, because that's my responsibility to provide that leadership, to make sure that staff has everything they need, to make sure our citizens have everything they need. But personally, what struck me most was the kindness piece. I can lead all I want, but nobody's going to follow unless I've a kind leader and they know that I've listened to them and I know them. That comes with that kindness. I think we are all absolutely overwhelmingly sick of the ugly that's out there and nothing getting accomplished. And I think if everybody could be a little kinder, no matter where they're coming from, what side, it ties certainly to what this working group is doing, we would be in a much better place and certainly more easily able to lead.
Thank you. So I do want to capture the value that everyone else jotted down, the one that you were thinking to speak to, but without explanation, can folks just share? I will jot them down and then we'll talk about some community agreements. And so maybe I'll call on folks and you can call on the next person. Sean, what was yours? What stood out to you?
I had a few of them, but I thought poise was interesting, to maintain that outward calm and while communicating this, especially in this environment to where it could be sensitive. And I just remembered you said don't explain, so I'll be quiet.
Thank you.
Hard not to sometimes.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing folks. Who's next? Who can go next? Go ahead, Jesse. Thank you.
I would just add openness, that, you know, asking people to go further in their openness, I think is really helpful.
Great. We had that one, which is great. Martha.
I had compassion, and that there are times when we face, you know, adversarial people, and I find that being compassionate helps them to work collaboratively, bridge our differences, and also work together towards, you know, meaningful goals. That is, you know, just being able to restore or heal or recover from whatever it is that created that situation. And I think I feel like that's always needed in on a daily basis.
Thank you. Ami? Sorry, I'm telling people now.
The one that I have, I didn't necessarily see it on there, but humility, I think, is very important in our role.
Thank you. Chair Jennings?
Balance.
Say that one more time.
Balance.
Balance. Thank you.
For ourselves and for all those that we serve, it is so important to have balance.
Excellent. Thank you. Who's left?
My word was reflection, to think before reacting.
Excellent. Anyone else? I think that's it. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, awesome. Great. Okay.
What was yours, by the way?
Mine is responsibility. I have a deep sense of responsibility that brings me to this work. Thanks for asking. Okay. So the next part of this conversation, I'm just going to leave it in this view to keep it simple. Curious, like what values from what was listed, we had some overlap in some of them, stood out to you. And then are there any values that you want to put into practice, and what might that look like as a community agreement? And so I gave that example earlier that perhaps authenticity is using I statements and speaking to your own experiences. Another example, if I use responsibility, it would be like coming to meetings and being on time, right? That's how we might translate that value into a behavior or an agreement. And so does anyone want to offer some possible community agreements that we want to land on together? And we can continue to grow this list, but what stands out to you now?
I have a couple that I'd like to offer for the group. Building off the value of humility, that no one knows everything, but together we know a lot more, and we all have something to learn and to offer. And then the second one I would offer is kind of a move up kind of value. It's make sure everyone is able to contribute. And that means also our community and, you know, public commenters as well, but everybody's able to contribute and be self-aware, self-reflection, listen, and be present.
Great, thank you. Others that stand out or that we want to build on?
Could I offer another one? I was leaving space.
Yeah. Well, real quick, Raul, I saw you go off mute.
Oh,
Do you
sure,
wanna,
no problem.
contribute?
So maybe this is an exceedingly practical one, but you know, I think it's important for us to certainly, one of the things I'm looking forward to, given the seriousness, sort of the significance of the issue, is that we document, right, sort of our deliberations, and then also come prepared, right, to participate in these meetings. So I'm grateful that we've, you know, got a virtual space that makes access easy, but we've got a number of these, right? So let's make the most out of the meetings that we have, and I think coming prepared will help us do so.
Thank you. And perhaps I could weave in something that Ami shared, which is come prepared to participate and be present in this space as much as you're able.
I think you had
William.
mentioned it earlier. You had mentioned authenticity. You know, you need to bring our present self and be really authentic about what we bring to the table and our beliefs.
Thank you. One I think is especially relevant today that I might offer is to accept and expect some non-closure along the way, right? We're not going to solve everything every single time we meet. So if you're open to that one, I would love to add that to the list. Accept and expect non-closure along the way. I'm seeing some nods. Go ahead, Shantae.
One that I think we really should include is an understanding that intersectionality will play a huge part in what we're doing. Not everyone will experience things exactly the same.
Right, recognize I would love to build on that too, which is a point around the difference between intent and impact, right? So really understanding that distinction.
And Danielle, that was going to be one I was going to offer, was acknowledge intent and affirm impact. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Are there others that feel burning right now? And again, we can continue to grow this list. Go ahead, Jesse.
I'm not really sure how to word it, but I would just want us to acknowledge that many of us have internalized the burdens of systemic racism, and maybe implicitly, not so explicitly, in how we interact.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to, it's a careful one.
So perhaps maybe practice some self-awareness, right? And then extend grace to others.
Okay.
Perhaps that's one way that we can grace and reciprocity around this learning and unlearning.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
If you could add compassion into those as well.
Absolutely. Any other burning ones? Harkening back to the values on the last slide, one that might come up is respect multiple forms of knowledge, information, right? Kind of appreciating that knowledge comes from lived experiences as much as it does from data, as much as it does from like experts, as much as it does from everyone. So there's something there about knowledge and information being valid from many sources that might be useful, but open to other suggestions on that point. Okay. Any final ones for now? All right. Okay, so we have a little bit of a decision point around how we spend the balance of our time. We had an intention to spend some time on the grounding, some grounding terms and concepts related to this work that we drew from the glossary in SACOG's REAP. But we wanted to have some discussion about those terms as well, instead of just putting the terms out there and being like, okay, bye, right? And so in terms of having some continuity when we come together next time, we could start with some of those grounding terms, have some discussion about them, and then move into the remainder of our conversation. Or we could try and fly through these grounding terms in like 5 minutes and then get to our wrap up. How are folks feeling moved in this moment?
I would like to offer, maybe we do take a look at them. I think they're going to be reflection points for us. We're going to, throughout our journey, we'll be landing on them and lifting them up at different points. So maybe just a quick introduction and then plant the seed, and then we can continue our conversations and deliberations with those terms.
Sure. So I can voice over some of these relatively quickly, and then we can potentially start our time next time with these terms as well. So if that sounds good to folks, I'm happy to jump into that. Lucky for you, I've presented the terms like these like a gazillion times. So I think I can move relatively quickly. So the definition of race as is presented in SACOG's glossary is the concept, and I would add to that, and the practice of dividing people into populations or groups on the basis of various sets of physical characteristics. We know that race has no scientific root to it. It is a social construct, but it is a social construct that has large impacts on folks' lived experiences and as we know, data disparities as we see in our communities. Racial equity being the state of achieving race no longer being used to predict those life outcomes. We know that it is the practice of dismantling structural inequity and should be a part of the creation and implementation of different institutional policies and practices, as well as the way that we as individuals situate ourselves within that system as well. Moving to the next one. Inclusion, ensuring the right conditions are in place for each person and group to achieve their full potential. Inclusion should be reflected in an organization's culture, practices, relationships, and the way that we engage in community, right? It's more just about having folks at the table, but it's about really empowering them to contribute in meaningful ways to our processes across the board. Diversity being any dimension that can be used to differentiate groups. So we oftentimes refer to diversity as it relates to race and ethnicity. We know that there are additional layers of diversity. Nod to the concept of intersectionality earlier. Many of us possess multiple identities, and at times multiple identities that are marginalized by these larger systems and structures of inequity. And that has an impact, right? That has an impact on how we show up in spaces, how spaces experience us, and how we experience those spaces as well. So that's diversity. I don't know how many of you have seen the equity and equality differentiators and a variety of different images that have been created through the years. I found this one recently, and I think it's actually the best that I've seen. So maybe you've seen the bike, maybe you've seen the folks trying to watch the ball game. I think this is a really beautiful differentiator between inequality. So we've got unequal access to opportunities, right? Here in this upper corner. So we see that the fruit is kind of concentrated on one side and it's really not making its way over here, right? So that's inequality. Equality, question mark. So if you move kind of lower left-hand corner, we've got like some evenly distributed tools. So they've both got the same height of ladder, but still the opportunities are not evenly distributed, right? We can talk about that in all kinds of sectors. Education is just an example, transportation, another. Then we've got equity. So awesome. We've got some tools that recognize the unique challenges that this person on this side of the tree that is leaning to the, this way, where they have actually less access to those fruits still. So let's give them an additional couple rungs of the ladder, right? But justice would be truly one, distributing the resources across the board, so across the entire tree. Two, bracing or shifting the structure of the tree or the structure of our institutions to really create that kind of equitable and equal access. So that's like fixing the system so that the tools and opportunities are equally distributed. Does this resonate with you all? Do you like this example? Martha, you came off mute. Do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think it's a good example in accessing, whatever people are all equally trying to reach out to.
Wonderful. Marco.
Yeah, back in my old radical days in the 60s, I used to criticize all the time equality. And the way that I explained it was, look, here I am, and I had polio. And you are asking me to run a mile and compete with people that have the two nice legs and are athletes. I said, I can get to that mile, but let me walk it. That's how you compensate. So they're providing equality to unequals. It's totally unjust and inequitable.
Yeah, and that's a particularly relevant conversation when we think about government, right, which is meant to serve all people. Well, how do we do that in a sophisticated way that acknowledges these inequitable systems and actually proactively seeks to address them? Okay, so obviously very juicy conversation, discussion to be had. Let's put a pin in it for next time. We will bring these back. Casey, I want to hand it over to you to kind of wrap us up with any final questions, next steps.
Yeah, I think I would that's exactly where we're at, which is, are there any questions about this as we have the last few minutes of our first meeting? This was your onboarding meeting, so hopefully that is how it felt, that we achieved the outcomes we set out for this particular meeting. Good. Okay.
Oh, may I ask, is there any advice or anything that you can direct our attention to what we should be ensure that we read and reflect on before the next meeting that would be purposeful as you all are visioning the flow and the agenda? Is there anything that we should make sure that we look to, since there's so much rich material, but anything that you would like us to focus on?
Yes, certainly. So the key terms that Danielle walked through today, take the opportunity before your next meeting to reflect on them and absorb them. Those are what we're proposing that will be our working definitions. And then also you have the Racial Equity Action Plan, and please get familiar with that, because we will be, what we hope to do is, in addition to diving deeper into what those actions are at the next meeting, we also are going to try to bring to you our first progress report so that you have some sense of how we're doing. So just having a working knowledge of the goals and the objectives will be very helpful to that.
Casey, notice April 21st, some board members, at least, maybe some of the participants on here too, maybe leaving for Cap to Cap that day.
Okay, thank you. We will, we hope that we will have at least 11 of you here so that we can hold this meeting. Thank you for that.
Casey, is that going to be an in-person or?
It'll be virtual, yes.
We're hoping to get all of you together in person at least once this year, because we think you're an amazing group of people, and we would love to have that kind of interaction. And maybe Danielle can come out to California too.
I would love that. I would love to join you all. I'm in New Orleans, by the way. I didn't mention that earlier, but I lived in California for 10 years. Okay, well, that brings us just about to our time. Chair Jennings, would you like to say anything before we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank everybody for being here and standing the test of time. The 2-hour meetings, you know, they can be very tough, as we all know, but we did a great job today, and I'm encouraged about the progress that we're making. I'm encouraged about those who are on this team who we're going to be working together with, and I'm encouraged about the work that we have in front of us. So looking forward to, like I say, meeting each and every one that I haven't met personally, and also touching base with all those who I do know. But thanks, Danielle, for your work. I want to thank the staff for all the work that they did behind the scenes, and our fearless executive director, James Corliss. I want to thank him as well for his leadership in this effort. So until we meet in April, looking forward to seeing each and every one of you. Have a great Easter, if that's something that you celebrate. And again, we'll see you in April 21st.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye.